It was Meghan Markle, and by the time Stewart dropped his now viral punchline, Meghan's name wasn't just trending. It was being dissected like a failed startup pitch on Shark Tank. All it took was one sentence. He called her the worst entrepreneur of the year. No tabloid headlines, no royal drama, just one brutally honest jab that echoed louder than any palace scandal. And the reason it landed like a direct hit? Because it felt true. It was the kind of truth that had been simmering for years, dancing around headlines and whispered in Hollywood circles, but never fully said out loud until Stewart tore the Band-Aid off in front of a national audience. For Meghan, this wasn't just another internet meme or Twitter moment. It was a reputational gut punch. Because, let's be real, she's tried to build an empire since leaving the royal family. An empire made of podcasts, publishing deals, production contracts, lifestyle brand rumors, and philanthropic sound bites. On paper, it looks like a dream, but in reality, it's a trail of glossy press releases and unfinished projects. Enough. You prove that you're a good wife or a good friend, Irk. And I was like, I am just so done with the prove-it game. Let's start with the podcast. Archetypes. Meghan's big audio debut. It was marketed as this boundary-breaking, feminist-forward, label-dismantling powerhouse of a show. The kind of project that was supposed to cement her as a thought leader. It had famous guests, it had Spotify's full backing, and it had a $20 million deal riding on it. But the execution? Woefully undercooked. Meghan Markle has finally revealed why she and Prince Harry call each other M and H. What could it be? Behind the scenes, it was chaos. Reports say ghostwriters carried much of the content. Meghan was minimally involved in the actual interviews. Some guests claimed they didn't even speak to her directly. The big themes never quite landed. And after just one season, the show fizzled out like a candle in a wind tunnel. Spotify pulled the plug, and they weren't gentle about it. In fact, Bill Simmons, one of Spotify's top execs, publicly called Meghan and Harry F-in grifters. That's not clickbait. That's someone inside the deal torching the bridge. So what did Meghan do next? She pivoted. Again. This time, she linked up with Lemonada Media. New show, new pitch, confessions of a female founder. The title alone sounded promising. Empowerment, leadership, womanhood. It ticked all the branding boxes. But after just 8 episodes, the project disappeared. Quietly shelved. No word on whether she was paid. No real audience buildup. No impact. Same cycle. Different platform. Hype, launch, fade to black. And that's why Jon Stewart's joke felt like a wake-up call. Because Meghan's business ventures aren't ventures. They're PR plays. Carefully packaged, expertly teased, but rarely followed through. And people are catching on. Not just the critics. Her own fans are starting to notice the patterns. Sure. But this is the new show the Netflix is promoting. With the American actress, who became a duchess, who tried to destroy the royal family, which then booted the Mad-a-Ving. Then there's the Netflix deal. Remember the buzz around the Sussex documentary? It promised an intimate, vulnerable look behind the curtain. Instead, it gave us a curated highlight reel, polished, safe, and ultimately underwhelming. Critics didn't hold back. Words like self-serving, surface level, and repetitive made their way into reviews, and while the doc may have pulled in views, it didn't build credibility. If anything, it widened the credibility gap. Her children's book, The Bench, followed a similar arc, released with the usual headlines and a sprinkle of praise. But within weeks, it vanished from the cultural radar. No awards, no significant literary impact, just polite nods and a fast fade. The common thread in all of this? Noise with no follow-through. Meghan's projects tend to look amazing on the outside. They're beautifully branded, immaculately shot, strategically timed, but the substance, always missing. And now, thanks to Jon Stewart, that shiny exterior has been cracked wide open for the world to examine. And let's not forget Archie Well, her non-profit brainchild. Yo, my name is Jon Stewart. I got a picture there. What's happening? We got a show for you tonight. Oh my God! It was supposed to be the soul of her post-royal life. Purpose-driven, global, compassionate, a bold pivot towards social impact. The website is full of aspirational phrases: compassion in action, mental health, racial equity, digital safety. But dig a little deeper and what you'll find are vague reports, undefined partnerships, and very few concrete outcomes. Meanwhile, other celeb-led foundations are out here doing the work. Rihanna's Clara Lionel Foundation is funding global education and disaster relief. The Obama Foundation is building leaders across the globe. Meghan's? It releases stylized photos and mission statements. It feels less like a nonprofit and more like an extension of her personal branding campaign. And then there's the mystery wellness brand. You've probably seen the whispers in the media. Meghan's planning a Goop-style empire. Or maybe it's fashion, or luxury home goods. Depending on the week, it changes. But one thing stays consistent. There's no actual product. Just Instagram teases and PR speculation. We've been hearing about this lifestyle brand for months now and still nothing. No launch date, no prototype, not even a website. Just vague ideas floating through headlines. It's branding without the brand. Which brings us back to Jon Stewart's Takedown. Let's go. I've always loved taking something pretty ordinary and elevating it. He didn't say anything cruel. He didn't attack her personally. He made a professional judgment. And in doing so, he did something the media has tiptoed around for too long. He pointed out the glaring difference between looking successful and being successful. Real entrepreneurs build. They grind. They lead teams, solve problems, and deliver results. Meghan? She plays entrepreneur the way an actor plays a role, with great costumes, a polished script, but none of the behind-the-scenes hustle that actually makes it real. And yes, the royal title helped. Let's not pretend otherwise. Being the Duchess of Sussex opened doors. It got her the meetings, the funding, the attention. It was the engine behind every business endeavor. But now, that glow is starting to dim. Every time she releases a new project, the public reacts with more skepticism than curiosity. The benefit of the doubt? Long gone. Even her staunchest supporters are beginning to ask hard questions. Where are the results? What happened to the big promises? Why does everything feel like a trailer for a film that never comes out? And here's the harsh truth. When a late-night host becomes the voice of reason in your professional life, it's time to reevaluate everything. Because once the comedians stop laughing with you and start laughing at you, you're not running a brand anymore. You're running on fumes. And it's not just the media that's pulling back. Behind the scenes, the fallout has real consequences. Some industry insiders are now describing Meghan as high-risk, low-return. That's Hollywood code for she brings too much drama and not enough payoff. Production companies that once scrambled to pitch her scripts are quietly distancing themselves. Studio execs are more hesitant. Sponsors are suddenly harder to lock down. You don't need official statements when the silence says everything. Netflix, for instance, has reportedly tightened its leash. While the Sussexes still have a development deal in place, the open checkbook era is over. There's more oversight now, more demands for deliverables, proof of concept, actual creative work. Meghan's planned animated series, Pearl, was cancelled before it even made it to production. The reason? Budget cuts were the official line, but the subtext was clear. They weren't willing to gamble on potential without performance, and that's the part Meghan never seemed to grasp. Hollywood isn't loyal, it's transactional. As long as you bring buzz, you're valuable. But the second the buzz turns into baggage, you're replaceable. And when Jon Stewart publicly mocked your business track record, that was a signal. A signal to producers, investors, and media execs that maybe the Duchess Midas touch wasn't all it was cracked up to be. The most uncomfortable part of all this is the timing. Meghan had finally begun laying the groundwork for a comeback. There were fresh headlines about her Hollywood relaunch, rumors of her signing with a new talent agency, whispers about a return to acting, or maybe a lifestyle empire that would rival the likes of Goop or Skims. The narrative was primed. Meghan 2.0 finally stepping into her power. But one well-timed Stewart jab cut through all that noise and reminded everyone of version 1.0. The version that left a trail of canceled shows, confused audiences, and headlines with more questions than answers. It was like watching a balloon slowly reflate, only to be popped by one sharp pin. And here's the deeper layer most people miss. Meghan isn't just facing public scrutiny. She's up against the expiration date on public patience. You can fail once, twice maybe. But in the celebrity business world, repeated failure, especially when accompanied by spin and silence, isn't just frowned upon. It becomes your brand. And once failure becomes your brand, rebuilding becomes 10 times harder. That's the trap she's in now. The more she tries to rebrand, the more obvious the inconsistency becomes. One minute she's an activist, the next she's a producer, then a podcaster, now a lifestyle guru. And in each role, she shows up with fanfare and exits with a shrug. Compare that with someone like Reese Witherspoon, who went from rom-com darling to Hollywood powerhouse by quietly buying up book rights, launching her production company, and delivering hit after hit. Reese didn't build Hello Sunshine on interviews and photo ops. She built it on strategy, execution, and actual output. And now she's respected, not just famous. Meghan, on the other hand, has tried to leapfrog the process. She wants the empire, but not the groundwork. She wants the Oprah tier platform without the Oprah tier grind. And in today's digital economy, where transparency is everything and audiences can smell inauthenticity from a mile away, that approach doesn't fly. Even the late-night monologue that triggered all this wasn't malicious. It was observational. Jon Stewart didn't say anything that hadn't already been whispered on Reddit, hinted at by columnists, or debated on podcast panels. He just made it undeniable. And because of who he is, respected, progressive, and not particularly prone to tabloid fodder, his critique carried weight. This wasn't Piers Morgan throwing a tantrum. This was a trusted cultural voice holding up a mirror. And the reflection wasn't flattering. Meghan's defenders, of course, rushed to her side. There were tweets about misogyny, about how women of color are held to unfair standards, about how Jon Stewart should have known better. And while those conversations are important, especially in an industry that is still deeply flawed, they can't obscure the core issue. Her business record speaks for itself. And it's not about her gender, it's about her results, or lack thereof. The truth is, Meghan has had more opportunity, more backing, and more media support than most entrepreneurs could ever dream of. And yet, what does she have to show for it? One canceled podcast, a shelved Netflix series, a children's book that barely moved units, and a nonprofit that generates more press than progress. At some point, even her most loyal supporters will have to reckon with that. Not because they want to abandon her, but because they're tired of defending potential that never materializes. Hope has an expiration date, and Meghan's, for many, is starting to sour. The irony is, this could have all played out so differently. She didn't need to launch a dozen projects. She could have picked one, poured herself into it, and delivered something exceptional. One brilliant podcast, one stellar documentary, One groundbreaking nonprofit initiative. Any one of those, executed with consistency and passion, would have been enough to silence the doubters. Instead, she chose volume over value, optics over substance. And now she's stuck in a brand crisis of her own making, where every new venture feels like an apology for the last one, where every headline reads like damage control instead of momentum, and where every public appearance is less about progress and more about perception. Even Harry, by contrast, seems to have found firmer footing. His memoir, Spare, may have been polarizing, but it was read. It made an impact. People talked about it. It charted. It proved that, for all his flaws, Harry at least had something to say, and said it clearly. Meghan, by comparison, is still trying to define what she's about. And until she figures that out, every project will keep feeling like a placeholder, like a test run for something that never arrives. That's what Jon Stewart tapped into. Not bitterness, not spite, but exhaustion. The cultural fatigue of watching someone with all the tools fail to build anything that lasts. The joke wasn't cruel, it was cathartic. It said what many had been thinking. We've been waiting, we've been watching, and we're still wondering, what do you actually do? And that's a hard question to bounce back from. It's not a scandal you can outtalk. It's not a press cycle you can outrun. It's a reputational wound. And those take time and real work to heal. Which leaves Meghan with a choice. She can stay the course. Keep launching shiny things with no soul behind them. Keep relying on optics and old headlines. Keep hoping the next project will be the one that sticks. Or she can stop, reassess, and do what real entrepreneurs do. Start small, start real, pick one thing, one mission, one message. Build something with roots, not just wings. Forget the brand deals. Forget the royal name drop. Forget the photo ops. Deliver something that actually matters. Because if there's anything the last few weeks have proven, it's this. People aren't waiting for the next Meghan Markle launch. They're waiting for her first real success. And if that never comes, then Jon Stewart's joke will go down not as a moment of meanness, but as the epitaph of an image that never lived up to its own hype. But here's the wild twist. Meghan's downfall isn't just about the money lost or the headlines gone sour. It's about timing. In an age where audiences crave authenticity more than ever, she had the perfect setup. A dramatic royal exit, global headlines, a sympathetic Oprah interview that felt like her Beyoncé at Coachella moment, and she wasted it. Not maliciously, but by treating her public image like it was bulletproof, instead of realizing it was on borrowed goodwill. She could have ridden that wave straight into cultural legacy territory. Instead, she's paddling against a tide of disappointment, and the current's only getting stronger. And that's not to say she can't turn it around. She can. But it would require something she hasn't shown yet. Vulnerability, without vanity. Because right now, every time she tries to reset the narrative, it feels less like a pivot and more like a cover-up. Less like growth, more like avoidance. Even the recent attempts at rebranding feel desperate. Sources close to the Sussex camp have been leaking stories about a massive new project on the horizon. A documentary on female entrepreneurs, a feature on climate activism, a new lifestyle line allegedly inspired by California living. But, again, just whispers, just headlines, no trailers, no hard dates, no receipts. The irony? If Meghan actually made a doc about the failures, the hard lessons, the uncomfortable truths she's faced post-royalty, it would probably go viral. People love redemption arcs, but only when they feel earned. And at the heart of it, maybe that's the real issue. Meghan hasn't shown her scars. She's tried to present herself as already healed, already wise, already triumphant. But real connection doesn't come from the victory lap. It comes from the limp, from showing us where it hurt, and how you kept moving anyway. Right now, the audience sees the limos, The Montecito estate, the designer outfits, the million-dollar deals, and not much else. And that's a problem, because you can't sell relatability if you refuse to show the cracks. Meanwhile, Meghan's critics, who were once dismissed as trolls or haters, are starting to look more like early warning signs. They weren't always wrong, just inconvenient. And now, the media that once protected her is joining in the criticism, not out of malice, but out of fatigue. And Jon Stewart? He wasn't the start of the backlash. He was the validation of it. He said what a lot of decision-makers in entertainment and business were already whispering, that Meghan Markle, as a brand, is all pitch and no product. That she's chasing entrepreneurial glory without putting in the entrepreneurial grit. That she wants to be seen as a visionary, but keeps producing visions with no staying power. And this moment isn't just about her. It's also a cautionary tale for the influencer-turned-founder generation. Meghan is a prime example of what happens when you confuse access with ability. When you mistake a fan base for a customer base. When you believe your own press, but forget to build something press-worthy. We've seen it before. Elizabeth Holmes had the black turtleneck and the TED Talk, but no working tech. Anna Delvey had the Instagram and Soho House dreams, but no business plan. Meghan? She's got the palace glow, the celebrity connections, the activist vocabulary, but no results. And while she's obviously not a scam artist, like Holmes or Delvey, she's skating dangerously close to that same pattern of overpromising and under-delivering. The risk? If this continues, she won't just be a late-night joke. She'll become a business case study, a headline in a Harvard class on failed personal branding, a cautionary slide in marketing conferences. Here's what happens when you launch a brand before you've figured out what it does. It doesn't help that Harry, in contrast, is quietly rebuilding. He's sticking to fewer projects, more personal ones. He's become a figure of quiet reflection instead of constant redefinition. And while his public perception isn't flawless, far from it, he doesn't look confused. Meghan, on the other hand, is still performing, still trying to sell herself in 10 directions at once. And let's talk about something everyone's too polite to say. The Markle fatigue is real. People are tired. Tired of being told something big is coming. Tired of media leaks and palace bashing when a new product is about to drop. Tired of the constant cycle of build-up with no emotional payoff. Because here's the truth. Celebrity doesn't equal loyalty. Attention isn't the same as trust. And when you burn your audience too many times, they don't come back. They move on. They find the next underdog, the next disruptor, the next voice that doesn't feel rehearsed. So what now? Well, Meghan has two options. She can double down, chase another Netflix pitch, reboot the podcast with a new name, start a skincare line, and hope something finally sticks. Or she can take a breath, a real one. Step away from the hype. Get off the red carpet. Stop trying to beat Oprah at her own game. And instead, listen to feedback, to critics, to advisors, maybe even to Jon Stewart, who, beneath the punchline, might have done her a favor, because buried in that joke was a challenge. A dare to stop pretending, to stop spinning, and finally build something real. Something with sweat in it, with time in it. Something she'd be proud of, even if no one watched. Because at the end of the day, legacy isn't about followers, or launch parties, or press releases. It's about impact, about what's left standing when the cameras go off. And right now, Meghan Markle, the brand, is looking more like a billboard than a building. It's not too late to fix that, but the clock is ticking, and the next punchline might not be as forgiving.